be better than us. Anyway, we've got some calls here. Looks like.
Yes,
So I'm ready
we
to take
do.
some.
What do you want to take?
So I'm super excited about this one already.
Oh, here we go.
And I'm going to go to Laura in Arizona here. Hey, Laura, you're on the air with Truth Wanted. Can you hear us? What's up?
I can indeed hear you.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up is the opposite of down, by the way.
Up is the opposite of down. What?
That's nominatively determined.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's based on it's the context of orientation. Anyway, Laura, you wanted to talk to us about tulpas. I am so excited to talk about tulpas. For those who aren't aware of what tulpas are, can you give like a brief explanation?
Yes, sort of. Oh boy, this.
I'll do it if you don't want to.
This is going to be slightly longer than brief.
Okay, no, I want to hear what you have to say. Go for it.
I was going to say, he has me as a guest on the show. He braced himself for lengthy explanations and chats and rambles.
Indeed.
You got to get what you can take. But anyway, tulpas, Laura. What are tulpas for people who don't know?
So, like, and a huge caveat before I even begin, I've only really been studying tulpas for a couple of months. The first definition that I heard of it was just in passing, like almost 2 years ago now, but I just kind of dismissed it because I had a lot of other things going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the very first definition that I'd ever heard of it was an advanced imaginary friend. A lot of tulpamancers, who are people who create tulpas, a lot of tulpamancers take offense to that particular definition.
I imagine.
So we're probably not really going to do anything with that, but just that's the kind of general idea that we're going for.
Yeah. So my understanding of tulpas, right? Yeah, it's the assignment of consciousness to things that otherwise would not be conscious. So there's different ideas. So some of it is like physical objects, but what's really become prominent in recent years from what I've seen is people will basically have, in colloquial terms, kind of an imaginary friend, right, that actually exists in their head. And depending on who you talk to, the tulpas will either say this is the result of something metaphysical, like they're actually there in some sort of metaphysical sense, or they'll say it's something neurological, like they understand that it's just something that the brain does or whatever. And why, like I've known about tulpas for a long time because a few years ago, I don't know if you remember because it's not as popular now, but like being into My Little Pony as like a guy was a thing. And you would see these posts from people online who were really into My Little Pony that would create tulpas of some of the characters of the show. Like they would actually consciously try to create these little characters in their mind. And there was a study done about tulpas specifically in the My Little Pony community about like who these kinds of people were. I remember they were mostly, suburban white kids, of varying ages, by the way. But I just also remember like, they just described kind of a lot of anxiety and a lot of sexual frustration as well, which is an interesting kind of explanation as to why someone would choose to want to do a tulpa, right? It's almost like a coping thing for some people.
Something like that. Yeah. It definitely can be.
Mm-hmm. But if you're listening and you have a tulpa and you want to talk to us about it, I think that's fascinating to talk about. But it's really wild to me that people like will just have the idea of just like, I'm just going to conjure this thing in my head and pretend like I'm talking to it. Or I guess to them, it's talking to it, and play this out. I know like it's based off of a cultural practice, at least. I think it's an not Indo-European, like an Indian, like
I think I've heard Tibetan monks.
Something Hindu. I think it comes from that kind of, and I guess some people, on Tumblr just kind of appropriated it, and kind of made it their own little thing.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah. But I know it's fascinating. So, like, what got you interested in tulpas here, Laura? Like, why did you want to bring it up today?
Wait, so can we?
Yeah, no. But
can we get a little bit of so what I've heard, because this is the first time hearing of it. Technically I heard about this.
Yeah, we should probably go with
2 minutes before the show. So it's imbuing a kind of thought through consciousness to something that doesn't have it objectively. Is it the belief that thing metaphysically has a consciousness?
Well, so that's the thing. It's going to depend on which person you talk to.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So some of them will say, metaphysically they think that being exists. Some of them will just say, it's just a trick of the brain. Yeah, it's going to be different for different people. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, at that point, it almost kind of depends on whether you think that people have souls or not. I don't believe people have souls, so I don't think tulpas have souls.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to be straying a little bit away from the spiritual side of things. I haven't done as much research in that because that just didn't really interest me. I am fascinated with psychology in general, so this was just super duper interesting to me.
Yeah, so like what have you found in kind of looking into this, especially since you felt the need to kind of want to bring it up on the show, which I think is great because it's something we definitely haven't talked about before.
Yes. So from what I understand, a tulpa is basically just a psychological phenomenon where, I was trying so hard to remember how to describe this.
It's
and
okay.
now it's just everything is completely left my mind.
I get
I'm
it.
so sorry.
You get on the call and you just, your brain kind of farts. Like it definitely happens to even people who've been hosting here all the time. So
if you want, there's tulpa.info/what is a tulpa.
There you go.
That is up that I could.
Yeah, I think I actually have that pulled up on my phone.
Is that a good source?
Why don't you start with the first couple sentences there, Jamie?
A tulpa is an entity created in the mind, acting independently of and parallel to your own consciousness. They are able to think and have their own free will, emotions, and memories. In short, a tulpa is like a sentient person living in your head, separate from you. It's currently unproven whether or not tulpas are truly sentient, but in this community, we treat them as such. It takes time for a tulpa to develop a convincing and complex personality. As they grow older, your attention and their life experiences will shape them into a person with their own hopes, dreams, and belief.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people would hear that and they would think, oh, is this like a multiple personality disorder? Or something like that.
That thought occurred to me.
And that's definitely probably a possibility for some of this.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced that
the FAQ here actually does have that as one of their general questions is how is this different from DID, MPD, schizophrenia, etc.
Well, those things are also different from each other.
Right. So that's why I'm saying
significantly
each of those could be confused with tulpa.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that's entirely the case. Surely it's an explanation for some people, but from just what I've read about it, it just seems like an active part of the participant who wants to kind of make this thing happen is making it happen. It's not the result of some sort of neurological disorder.
Yeah, it seems that at the very least, developing a tulpomancy is deliberate.
Yeah.
Even if there's no other difference, that seems.
Because why would I wouldn't I'm not going to have a tulpa of Rainbow Dash from My Little Pony unless I'm a fan of the show and I really like
it,
right? It's it's something that you want this kind of character to be real, I think. And then they just,
I mean, You're looking at me. I would say that's probably true, but I don't actually have the answer.
I don't know, but
I was gonna say.
Well, maybe you're actually a tulpa right now, Jamie.
I feel like you're leaning into some hard solipsism there a little bit. The world is what I imagine it to be. In which case you have an excellent imagination. I think quite a lot of myself.
Well, I think that's an easy way to justify a belief like this because it's like how you can't prove that it's not because it's in my head, and so people can just kind of.
Well, so is it a belief? I mean, you said that some people believe that there's an actual sentient entity.
If we're going with, and I'll let Laura chime in here too, but if we're going with the idea that these are actually sentient beings that kind of live in your head, or maybe they don't necessarily all say that they live in your head. Maybe they think they're outside and they just communicate whatever. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a belief that not everybody would say is the best explanation for what's going on there, right?
Yeah, that's not the explanation that I would proffer.
No, I wouldn't do it. But anyway, I want to let Laura chime in here because I think she has something to say.
Yes. So one thing goodness, I could go off on so many rabbit trails. So what I personally believe is that it is a psychological phenomenon, but they are actually like separate individual people that can all just sort of use the same brain, so to speak, as the way that they do things. Like humans don't really use 100% of their brain all the time. I mean, we'll use different parts for doing different things, but like a tulpa could easily live in one of those pieces of the brain that's not being used by you consciously at the moment.
So, so the way that you're characterizing the amount of a human's brain that we use, I think is not necessarily the best way of representing that, because there's the humans only use 10% of their brain stuff, and that that's also another huge thing that I probably shouldn't have even brought up. Well, because it's not true.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, oh dear.
I mean, it's not true. It's not true in the way that it sounds. It's 10% of the brain matter that you use performs a specific function directly related.
I don't think that's what she was saying.
No, I know. I meant to.
What I was meaning.
I meant to say that just as an aside. But the question that I would want to ask is, when you say it's like multiple people using the same brain, the people that weren't born in that brain, we'll say, the Tulpas, do you think that their origins are from outside that brain, or is their creation from the brain?
Personally, I believe that their creation is from that brain, just because I don't think that there is anything outside of the brain that would, like, the whole soul thing. I don't believe in souls.
Yeah. Okay. Because it sounds like your idea of what makes a person is their particular brain function.
Yeah. And so this would just be
identity.
Two individual people that just happen to be using the same brain.
See, I don't know if it's even two individual people. I think it's like there's the one person and then there's the extra personality that first person creates. You know what I mean? I think if it's something...
No, not necessarily.
Because I don't think...
That is definitely one way to look at it, that's for sure.
Because I don't think people are role-playing necessarily as their Tulpas or believe that they are their Tulpas.
No.
They think that the Tulpas are...
That is a different thing entirely.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So is it possible for the Tulpa to know or think something that Is there a word for, host brain personality?
We'll just call it host and Tulpa for now.
Okay. Is it possible for the Tulpa to know and think something that the host is unaware of?
See, yeah, that's interesting.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I think the Tulpomancer would say yes. Right? I think what we would say...
I certainly would.
Yeah, wait, sorry, are you a Tulpa mancer? No. I almost said Tulpa master. Have you mastered the Tulpas?
I would consider myself one, yes. I've only really had my Tulpa for a couple of months, so he's still pretty young, still becoming himself, but he is there, and I have felt things from him. So that's a thing. We'll talk more about him later, though.
Man, okay, wait, I want to talk about your Tulpa now. Who is your Tulpa?
Okay.
Bring it on out.
My Tulpa is named Russell. You know Mew from Pokemon?
Mm-hmm.
He kind of looks like that, except not quite so chibi.
All right.
And red.
I'm into it. So, I like Pokemon. Pokemon are cool.
Hey. What shade of red is your Tulpa?
What shade of red is your Tulpa? Was Russell a thing before you even started looking into Tulpas? Or how did Russell come about?
So... Like I said, almost 2 years ago now is the first time I ever heard about Tulpas at all. I didn't even know what the word was. Until a couple of months ago, I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to research this. I'm going to figure out what this thing is, because it sounds interesting, and I actually have some time right now. So I did some research for a couple of days, and then was just sitting on my couch doing more research. And I was like, you know what, I want to do this. This sounds awesome. And so I did a little bit of more research of how to make a Tulpa, and then Russell just sort of appeared. He didn't have a name at the time, but I was able to mentally picture him in the room with me.
Wow. Okay.
Which was interesting.
I have so many questions, but first I do want to point out for those who are listening, because you won't get this if you're just listening to the podcast feed. Our folks did change our background here to say subscribers wanted instead of truth wanted, which very good, Vern. I appreciate that. I'm assuming that's you that did that, so appreciate you.
Yeah.
Okay, so wow. So when you pictured him, were you actively trying to picture a thing, or would you say this idea just kind of came to you, like this image just appeared? Like, were you?
I'm a super creative person in general. I love creating characters and worlds and stories and like figuring out the rules of the world to know how far I can bend them before they break. So coming up with characters and personalities for them is really, really easy for me. So he just kind of appeared. As soon as I made the conscious decision, I want to do this, then he just sort of appeared. And I wanted him to, because I read that they were supposed to be like their own person, I wanted him to be able to be his own person and not just like be whatever the heck it is I wanted him to be.
How long did you say you were doing this research before the creation of Russell, or before birth? Is it birth?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, you can call it a birth if you want. I generally consider it a creation at that point.
Okay. So how much time before the creation of Russell had you been researching tulpas?
Only a couple of days at that point, to be honest.
Okay. And just a couple of hours on those days, or?
Yeah.
You're trying to catch metrics on the specifics here,
I'm just
actually had. Sorry.
I'm just trying to establish, like, because there's a lot of things that prime, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of this as a psychological phenomena, and you're describing the behavior of a tulpa, and I'm wondering whether a tulpa just showing up rather than you imagining it is consistent with the research that you found.
So, like, the stuff you were looking at before priming the tulpa,
can show up. There are a couple of ways the tulpas can show up, to be honest.
I believe it.
However, this is not the end of the story, though. So I did that, and then I decided to go on YouTube and look at some of those hypnosis videos, because there are some that are like specifically primed for like creating a tulpa or like connecting with one or whatever. So I did one of those, and I had a really interesting experience where I realized that the personality that I had given Russell to begin with wasn't actually who he was and wasn't who he wanted to be. It was mildly traumatic, and it made me realize that I was.
So this is what's
properly
scary to me.
That's fascinating to me. Did the tulpa act with the personality that you had given the tulpa?
Yeah.
Okay, I should probably back up a little bit. So when I first created him, he was a lot more energetic and flirty.
Ooh.
And I know, right?
I was going to say, well, my lonely nights are over. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, that could go off on another rabbit trail, man.
No. Keep telling your story.
Sorry.
That show's on Thursday nights.
Jesus.
So he was very flirty, very teasing in the way that he would interact with me. But I realized later that I was controlling everything that he said and did. And when I did the hypnosis thing, I realized that I was the one controlling him. I was the one doing that. And that he didn't like that.
Okay, so to clarify, you watched the hypnosis after Russell had already been created?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just getting the timeline here.
So
sorry.
You're good.
And then, so Russell kind of fought back, or at least your idea of Russell as a conscious being was, kind of taken aback by what you're doing.
If this will help, there was something like the what we were doing. Like there's this, you can see this thread between yourself, between your chest and your tulpa's chest, or something like that. And what I saw that
wait, sorry, your chest and
different.
Your chest and the tulpa's chest?
The tulpa's chest.
What do you mean?
So Russell's chest and my chest.
Does Russell's chest exist in physical space?
You see it?
This was in hypnosis, by the way.
Okay.
So we were currently in like some kind of a forest glade grove thing.
Oh. In your mind?
Grass and then surrounded by trees. Yeah, in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, like that scene from Twilight. Sorry.
Stop it with your witty banter. You're making her nervous, and she's getting
laughing.
distracted. Let her tell her story.
I'm a very distractible person.
Sorry.
I'm a very distractible person. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Right. So, Russell. So we were in this forest, and the hypnosis person, I can't remember who it was, said, like, there's a thread between your chest and your Tulpa's chest. And then he kind of went off on his own little tangent. He grabbed the thread, he broke it, and he ran away. And I freaked out a little bit until I realized, oh, he's actually doing this himself. It's not me doing this, because I kept trying to, like, regain control of his body to bring him back. And I was like, oh, that's probably what he doesn't want, is me controlling his body.
Huh. Well.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, so that's what's... So I was going to say this earlier, but what's scary to me is the idea that, like, oh, you can invite a conscious being into your brain space. Like, you want to try it? I'd be like, no. Like, I like my brain where it is. I don't want to share. You know what I mean? But I guess different strokes for different folks. But, like, I don't... Like, so you know, we obviously know that the brain can do things unconsciously, you know, without, like, our consent. Like dreams and stuff. Like, that's mostly without conscious thought. You know, there's some people that say they can... lucid dream and stuff like that. So, like, you know, what... You know,
Which is awesome, but I've never been able to do it.
Are we sure that this isn't... Oh, okay. That's...
Have you tried?
Lucid dreaming, I haven't really tried too terribly hard.
Okay.
I think everyone's mildly tried before. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, like, so... Well, no, because she heard about Tulpas and then did research about it. And so I was wondering whether she had attempted lucid dreaming and that was a psychological phenomenon that despite the same amount of research hadn't occurred, but that wasn't the case.
I'll put this caveat out there as well, though. Until about a year-ish ago, I was a Mormon, so that kind of had a mental block. Now that I'm an ex-Mormon, I don't have that mental block for this stuff anymore, which is part of why I actually wanted to try it first.
Yeah, you get to be more open-minded.
Honestly, one of the first, like, psychological phenomenon I've actually tried.
I'm with you on that. Now, as far as, you know, what you think this psychological phenomenon is for yourself, do you ascribe this as something that's completely explained through neurology, or do you think there is a separate sentience involved, or, like, what's your explanation to the existence of Russell?
I think that it is a psychological phenomenon, that it's still just my brain doing brain things. I'm just trying to convince it that there is another sentient person besides myself using my brain.
Yeah, okay.
So you're...
It's not an outside force at all.
Yeah.
So
at least not to me anyway.
Okay, yeah.
The way you've just described it is, I'm trying to convince myself that there's a conscious brain inside of it. So does that mean that there's an element of doubt here about Russell's existence?
Well, I mean, there's no way to know for sure that he actually is there. I have my personal experiences, but I can't, like, scientifically show that he's there.
Well,
so there's always that, like, non-zero chance that he's not there, and that it's just my brain being my brain.
I mean, yeah. So now I have a second question, because it sounded like that's what you were saying you believe to be the case. Is that currently the conclusion that you hold?
Yes. It is currently the conclusion that he is actually there, and that this is a psychological phenomenon that we just don't understand very well yet.
What do you think of, but most people in the Tulpa community, I mean, obviously you would probably be in a newer camp in that, you know, I don't keep my ears to the ground in this. Like, are most people in the Tulpa community, are they thinking that this is, I guess most of them would say that it actually is a sentient being that exists outside themselves, be it, you know, metaphysical or neurological or whatever.
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause that's interesting.
Which also, like, brings me to the thought of Wonderlands, because, like, the way you keep describing it keeps making me think of Wonderlands, and that's another rabbit hole that we probably shouldn't go down.
Probably not. We do have to. I do want to give some time to some other callers here in just a sec here, but if for people who want to at least know more about the Tulpa stuff, like, what was it that you were looking at so that people can kind of poke their heads into it? Because I think it's interesting just to look at, right?
This won't be the last time I learn.
I'm going to put you in speaker again for a second. Yes, Tulpa.info has a lot of really good information, as well as what I mostly went to. I got you off speakerphone now. Where I got most of my information from was actually from Reddit.
Of course.
There's actually 2 subreddits for tulpas. One is just tulpa with an A at the end. The other is tulpas with an S at the end.
Nice.
The tulpas with an S at the end is way more active. So go there.
There you go.
If you have any questions about tulpas.
So now if you want to know more about tulpas, because now I might look up some more stuff later. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, they're fun.
It's interesting to see how people explain and describe what's happening in their brains. But anyway, Laura, I want to give you
one thing I did want to get to though before I go
very quickly
was how the host and the tulpa communicate.
Okay.
Because that's always a little bit different. And I don't think I've ever really heard anyone describe the way that me and Russell have communicated. I almost forgot. I haven't even finished Russell's story. Oh my
shit.
gosh, I got completely distracted.
Okay, let's try to wrap it up in the next couple minutes here, and then yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll try to be fast. Don't distract me, Jamie. Okay, so the thing happened with the hypnosis where I realized that he didn't want to be controlled. Then things started happening in real life, and I kind of put him on the back burner with something called passive forcing. Whoever wants to look up information about tulpas, they can look up what passive forcing is. I don't feel like giving a definition. So just kind of imagining that he is there with me and trying very hard to not control what he does so that he can do his own thing and be his own person. In the last couple of months, like in the last month or 2-ish, I think, I've actually been able to have some very simple conversations with him, though. Most of it is where I will be like asking him a question, but he will answer before I've actually finished the question. And that's how I know that it's him answering and not me, is because we'll kind of be talking over each other.
Okay.
In my head. As well as, oh, right, I totally forgot. This is a thing that I wanted to get to as well.
All right.
Dang,
45 more seconds here, Laura. 45 seconds. Can we do it?
So bringing up the idea that Jesus, God, whoever it is that people pray to, that is also an accidental tulpa, where they really do think that they are talking to a real person and that person will talk back. That is very, very similar to how tulpas are created by tulpamancers.
Man, there's definitely some
very, very similar.
I'm hesitant to explore that angle, but there's definitely some similarities there.
I was going to say that absolutely can be explored in the last 15 seconds.
Different version of the phenomenon there, but I feel like it is somewhere in the same general vicinity as that.
So what's interesting,
at any rate,
is that there's a relatively famous among, I suppose, YouTube activists that have an interest in neuroscience study about testing like the moral beliefs of a person's God, right? And they asked the person, what do you believe about X, Y, Z? And they studied an fMRI of what was going on in their brain. And they said, what do other people believe about X, Y, and Z? And they did that. And then they asked, what does God believe about X, Y, and Z? And the firings on the fMRI when they were answering what God believes were similar, if not the same, as when they were describing themselves.
How they felt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then when describing like what somebody else thought, it was a completely different set of neurons firing.
Yeah. Yes, I have heard of that as well. Because why would you not have the same morals as your God? You know, if you truly believe,
right?
It's very difficult to say. Yes, the perfect judge of the universe believes X, but I kind of disagree.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so we do got to go. We got other calls here. But Laura, thanks so much for calling. Yeah. I'd love to talk to you about Tulpa stuff some more.
I had a lot of fun, even though I was so nervous.
Hey, you did great. Yeah. And thanks so much for sharing your experiences. I look forward to hearing from you again. And take care.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a Discord and a Reddit and a Discord, I already said, but there's a thing on a thing, so I might have said it, where the conversation can continue in between.
That's true. We do have the Atheist Community of Austin Discord where people can also check us out. And you should join us after the show as well.
On Discord. Link in the chat.
But yeah, no, so so much to say. I got other calls. But like, I mean, it's
interesting.
Isn't it cool? Because this community, I feel like, can really only exist as big as it is because of the internet, right? When people do this kind of
The Tulpas, you mean?
Well, I mean, obviously Tulpas have existed before the internet, right? But like,
well, you say
so
that
for us to even have a conversation is because of the internet, the dissemination of that
it's
kind of
true.
information, right?
Yeah, but it's also possible that Tulpas or any practice that resembles this hasn't been. Well, I guess this is supposedly from a meditative practice of monks in Tibet.
Yeah, or something like that.
Why is it all the meditate?
They came up with a lot of crazy shit. Also, hypnosis is crazy, and we haven't talked about that enough. I've seen people get hypnotized.
Yeah.
And that's a really weird thing.